People take drugs. That shouldn't be a shocking fact to anyone. Teenagers take them because they're idiots and want to experiment, and adults take them because they want to have fun or escape reality. It's a fact of life. As long as humans have had access to drugs, they've been taking them. Some drugs are fairly safe: caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis. But other drugs are incredibly addictive and life-threatening: PCP, methamphetamine. But some drugs, whilst they might not be the safest, it's actually the circumstances in which people take them that make them so dangerous. And it's entirely possible to make that danger go away. MDMA, ecstasy, caps, pills, whatever you want to call them, 13.6% of the Australian population has tried it at least once, with 2.1% or 400,000 people using MDMA within the last 12 months. For those of you who don't know, it's a party drug. It makes you feel good in small doses and can cause hallucinations in higher doses. Most typically, people take M when there's somewhere there's lights and music, raves, festivals, clubs, places like that. Fun is subjective, and different people have fun in different ways, especially at festivals. Some people like listening to music fully sober, taking it all in. Others like to get drunk, either buy drinks while they're there or sneak it in one way or another. Some people take the risk and like getting stoned, relaxing and listening to people live, and some people like seeing really pretty lights and feeling super connected with the people around them. I'm not here to judge and say any of those are wrong. Some are infinitely smarter than others, and I'll be explicitly clear: I do not ever endorse taking or using illegal substances. However, much like with celibacy, saying don't do it doesn't seem to cut it. If we acknowledge this fact of the matter, that people will take drugs no matter what, the reasonable next question should only be, how do we keep them the safest? Off the top of my head, I would say find a way to make sure people aren't taking contaminated drugs and make sure people aren't taking too much of a drug. And that's exactly what the Australian government across the country did, right? That's exactly it, right? That's exactly... Pill testing or drug checking is exactly what it sounds like. People can test their drugs to make sure they're safe. Australia conducted its first pill testing trial at the Groove and the Moon Music Festival on the 29th of April 2018, and it was a resounding success. 128 young people tested their drugs, with pill testers finding 2 samples that were deadly. A year later, pill testing happened again. This time, they tested 170 substances from more than 230 participants and found 7 pills containing a potentially deadly drug. That's 9 lives saved. This debate should be over. Having a pill testing setup at a festival was used by attendees, it successfully detected potentially deadly drugs, and additionally prompted people to take pamphlets or ask questions about their drug use. That's a winning scenario. So it became the norm, right? That's exactly what the government did, right? Of course it isn't. In New South Wales, for instance, despite the fact that 5 people had died at music festivals in the summer of 2019, compared to 12 deaths in the previous decade, and despite the fact that one of the recommendations from the inquest into those deaths at music festivals recommended pill testing, then Premier of New South Wales Gladys Berejiklian closed the door on pill testing. Gladys attempted to argue that pill testing wouldn't have saved their lives because it was pure MDMA that killed them. But whilst more expensive, pill testing can check purity, not just contaminants, which in turn could have saved lives. Now, not all deaths can be prevented by pill testing. In a study assessing the deaths of 64 people at music festivals, they found 12 of those deaths were from toxicity to MDMA, 7 to toxicity to multiple stimulants, 11 to combined drug toxicity, 10 to natural disease in the setting of drug use, and 24 to external injury in the setting of drug use. She's right, it wouldn't have saved them all, but it definitely could have saved some. And in my opinion, governments ignoring an obvious life-saving approach like pill testing is tantamount to knowingly letting these young people die. There's the argument that pill testing encourages young people to take drugs, but the reality is data does not suggest that having pill testing present encourages the increased use of substances. What data does suggest is that it saves lives. Important to know, you can test your drugs at home using testing kits, but of course it's actually better to go to the experts, especially if you're buying it for something like a festival where you're around strangers, overheating and tired. Some pill testing tents also have these really good and huge banners that inform you the risks of combining different types of drugs. They are just good educational things to have, and we know pill testing saves lives. We know it doesn't inherently encourage the use of drugs, and we also recognize people take drugs no matter what. Therefore, we should want people to be able to easily access the service. For those states where drug testing is an option, if you wanted to test at a festival, there's no barrier to doing it, right? Oh, for fuck! Mobile pill testing facilities like the ones used at music festivals are of course set up in the festival. There's a core issue with that though. For those of you who haven't been to a festival before, one barrier to testing is the fact that there is a horde of police and sniffer dogs blocking your ability to make it into the festival. Drugs are currently criminalized across Australia, meaning if you are caught in possession of MDMA, you can be criminally charged. You can be fined up to $5,000, be given community service or jailed for up to 2 years if you're caught with or using MDMA, and you better pray you don't have enough MDMA on you for it to be considered a trafficable quantity. And if you're caught giving even a single cap to a friend, it's game over. So given there are such harsh penalties and there is a wall of police and sniffer dogs outside the entrance, what do people do? Some people panic and throw their drugs into amnesty bins, which was the Berejiklian government's hope. Others rely on buying the drugs whilst they're on the inside, letting someone else take the risk of smuggling them in. In this case, if there's no pill testing on site, it means people are buying drugs without knowing what's in them. Some smuggle it in themselves, and at times, I literally mean in themselves. And others take all their drugs at once before going in, not wanting to risk sneaking them in or lose out on the high. So what was the government and police's response to this harsh reality that no matter what, people were going to find a way to get their drugs in or take risky action? It wasn't take a critical look at how they handled drugs at festivals, ensured people were taking them safely and remove barriers to safer use. It was to strip young men and women down, naked, and meticulously check their bodies for potential drugs. And when I say young, I mean it. A police watchdog found that New South Wales police had unlawfully strip searched 4 minors between the ages of 15 and 17 without attempting to contact their parents or have a guardian present. Let that sink in. On top of all of that, the woman who wrote that coroner's report that recommended the use of pill testing also noted that she was satisfied there was significant evidence that intensive and punitive drug policing operations were increasing drug-related risks and harm. Drug dogs had the capacity to cause harm without strong evidence it is effective in reducing overall drug supply, and she was of the firm view that there was sound evidence that high-visibility policing and the use of drug dogs is a harmful intervention, and the wholesale practice of strip searching young people was of grave concern, and its use to target people suspected of drug possession was out of line with the purposes of the legislation. Where to from here? In regards to pill testing, there's actually some hope. Under the current Minns Labour government, there is going to be a pill testing trial in 2025. It's going to last 12 months and only cost around $1 million to roll out. I'm very keen to see what data comes from this, and I hope it encourages the New South Wales government to finally pull the trigger and make drug testing the norm. Some states aren't so far behind, but none are particularly great. Since 2022, Canberra has had drug testing available to the public, Queensland launched 2 permanent drug testing facilities in 2024, and Victoria also agreed to implement 1 facility in 2024, but that was only after a spike in drug overdoses, with the Northern Territory, Tasmania, South Australia, and Western Australia at the back of the pack. When it comes to police presence and sniffer dogs, dogs need to be removed from festivals and police presence feeling less panoptic. Being told God is always watching doesn't stop people having sex, in the same way an increased police presence watching you doesn't stop people taking drugs. It stops people taking them safely. Interestingly, New South Wales police also seem to be rorting the festivals, charging excessive amounts for monitoring New South Wales festivals compared to festivals in other states. Ergo, the New South Wales police were charging between tens to hundreds of thousands to strip search minors and 20-year-olds naked on the suspicion of drugs. There's a landmark class action against the New South Wales police for their use of strip searching starting in May this year, and I cannot wait to see what happens. A final piece of this puzzle is the necessity to decriminalize personal drug use. Decriminalization means we don't treat someone using drugs as a criminal offense. It doesn't make it legal, but it stops people falling into the criminal justice whirlpool. Sadly, New South Wales has just flat out rejected the concept of drug decriminalization, instead trialing a 2-strike diversion scheme where first and second drug offenders can pay $400 and speak to a health professional rather than a magistrate. But it seems to be the case most of the time diversion is available. Other offences inhibit said diversion, with the program mainly benefiting privileged people who don't need the educational intervention. With drug use, there is never a clean answer, but this refusal to implement policies that can actually save lives is tantamount to murder, in my opinion. Our young people do not need to die because the government and police refuse to accept the uncomfortable reality that people take drugs. Police take drugs. Government officials take drugs. We don't need to let these people die. But hey, come join the Discord, come talk about it, come say hi, come let me know your thing in the comments. It's been real.